I want to talk about Destiny, free-to-play Destiny, Destiny 2 Shadowkeep, and the future of Bungie. A lot of really interesting news coming out from Bungie this week, and my chair is sinking again. I fucking hate this thing. So, earlier this week, Destiny launched their latest expansion, Shadowkeep, and they also released their free-to-play base game, Destiny. I think I have this name right. Destiny 2 New Light is how they're referring to it now, right? So, I'm trying to think of any other game that's ever done this. They took the game offline for 24 hours prior to the release of Shadowkeep and the free-to-play version of it to make sure everything was right. They launched it and still ran into some pretty significant issues because of just the gigantic concurrent player base trying to log into the game. This is an article from Joseph Knopp over at IGN. Apparently, I'm just taking the information from this. Apparently, on Steam, over 200,000 players were concurrently trying to log on to Destiny, and it caused really long server queue issues, and then it just caused the game to completely crash. And so they ended up having to take it offline yet again in order to perform maintenance, and I think it was down for about an hour, I want to say, maybe a little longer than that. And so I think it's clear people are excited about getting back into Destiny, the new expansion, the free-to-play model. So let's just start there. With Destiny, I feel like we go through ebbs and flows with the popularity of this game. Where do you feel like it is now, and how do you feel like Bungie is going to capitalize on what seems to be some pretty considerable excitement here?
Well, I think it's been quiet for a while, and although the Division is kind of in the same space, I just don't think that it ever filled the space the way that Destiny did. I don't think people got as hooked into the Division as they got hooked into Destiny. And so I think bringing this game back with any kind of newness is going to drive some excitement. But I also think that they just really stand to benefit from that separation from Activision. Whether that's fair and warranted or not, I think a lot of people blame Activision for a lot of the things that they were upset with Destiny. And so I think this is a great opportunity for Bungie to really start with almost a clean slate and to be able to drive a whole new level of excitement with the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of ebbs and flows, it's kind of a pattern for games that choose to take the approach that Bungie is taking with Destiny. I mean, it's the same with World of Warcraft. You always see a massive spike in the player base whenever there's a new expansion of any kind. And I've been part of that kind of pattern. Whenever a new expansion came out, especially the big one that came out for Destiny 2, I jumped back in because I thought this is the time the game will finally click with me. Spoiler alert, it never did, but for many people it did. And I think I've been saying for a long time that Destiny needed a free-to-play option. An option. It didn't need to be free-to-play altogether because it was never going to be, but having that new light option is a great way to onboard people. Like, I played the demo for the original Destiny, and I thought it was a great way to get me hooked. Playing a small slice of it and then diving into it all the way in. And so obviously that has been a huge draw for people. I think it's probably been a great way for the really hardcore players to say, hey, friends who haven't played this game before, dive in while you can. Dip your toes into it, and if you love it, then dive in all the way. That game has such a hardcore player base. Like, I have a friend who has popped into to watch this show every now and again, who, I mean, he still raids in that game every single weekend. And there is a solid player base like that, but being able to expand to what we saw in terms of these numbers is pretty significant. And I hope it's a sign of their approach now that they're not with Activision. I know they stress the idea that they're going to be doing more limited content releases, but more quality and just more beefier content releases, kind of sizable expansions that really bring something new, as opposed to just small seasonal updates like the Iron Banner stuff. And so I hope that's a way to kind of retain players and just bring people back in over and over again.
Yeah, I think it's cool to see a renewed excitement around Destiny more than kind of mainstream conversation around it, because I do think it's been relegated largely to the pocket of fans that try to stay connected with that game. And so seeing these stories like this about the popularity of it, seeing the excitement around the free-to-play option, which I think is a brilliant move from Destiny for all the reasons that you were saying, Cody. It's cool to see, and I am excited. Larry, you mentioned, like, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but you alluded to the fact that a lot of people were saying things are going to be different now with Bungie breaking away from Activision. Then talking about, like, I remember the conversation was, oh, they're going to have so much more creative freedom. There's a lot of things that they wanted to put into this game wanted to do with this game that Activision wasn't going to allow them to do. And I know Bungie made a point to come out and to say, no, it wasn't like that at all. We enjoyed our time working with Activision. And while I believe that their time with Activision was definitely great, and I think that they enjoyed a lot of successes with Activision, I think they downplay the fact that there are expectations that a publisher places on you that probably dictate the creative direction of your game. And it doesn't make any sense for a company who's going out on their own self-publishing for the very first time to burn a bridge by saying something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that this free-to-play move, this new model that they're trying to adopt to get new players in, is something that I'm not sure Activision would have ever allowed to happen. With, like, when has Activision ever really done anything free to play? Like, I'm legit asking. I mean,
they do those free to play, like, blackout
weekends. Yeah,
that's about it.
Yeah, but nothing this, like, large scale. And even with Call of Duty, people have been saying, like, why don't you just break out blackout mode, make it free to play, and be able to better compete in this space? And it just never happened. And so I think it's pretty. I think it speaks volumes to the fact that the very first thing Bungie decided to do once they got outside of that partnership with Activision was create a free-to-play model. I think that we're going to see Destiny continue to play around with their monetization model and figure out what works. And this clearly worked. I mean, over 200,000 players on PC trying to get back into it on the very first day. Now, I do think it is pretty shitty that it didn't work on the first day, just because I think this is a little different than a brand new game that launches and that excitement. You know, there's a lot of people who have either stepped away from Destiny for a while, or there have been people who have written Destiny off as an option for them for whatever reason, who are wanting to come back into this game. And I think it's a little more damaging to a game as old as Destiny for the first, experience people have trying to jump back in is, oh man, we had to take it offline for server maintenance. I think it's a little less room for forgiveness there.
Especially when, not all, but some of those people quit playing over issues that they've had with how the game was managed or issues that weren't resolved in the game. They're going to be those that come back, and if their first experience is this, then the reaction is, oh, okay, well, there's still stuff screwed up. I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think we're just going to continue to see Destiny make changes, take risks, experiment with things. Because they have the leash to do that now. They can afford to make some mistakes.
And I think Destiny is something they need to keep as kind of a foundation for future ventures as well. I think it's, especially going the free-to-play route, I think it's possible that Bungie can use Destiny as a consistent source of revenue to be able to pursue whatever new IP they eventually end up creating, which may or may not be a massively multiplayer game. I would not be surprised if they decide to do something a little bit more reserved in scope, and a little bit less in the looter shooter genre. I think they're always pushing themselves to do new things. But I think the continued success of Destiny would allow them to pursue whatever new IP they end up going to, which is clearly part of their plan.
Yeah, let me jump in right there because I realized I forgot to link to the story in our show notes, even though I alluded to it. This is a story from Matt Kim at IGN UK about an interview that they had with Bungie CEO Pete Parsons, in which he said that one of their goals is for Bungie to become, quote, one of the best entertainment companies, end quote, in the world by the year 2025. And the quote you're talking about, Cody, is he said, quote, "So by 2025, we have a pretty specific path to make sure we transform Destiny and that we have other franchises within the marketplace," end quote. And so it's clear that Bungie wants to create new IP. They also talk about publishing and getting more into that world, and so you're also talking about possibly finding smaller creators and helping them get their games across the finish line as a publisher. But let's jump back into that conversation you started, Cody, with this new IP. Knowing Bungie's history and their pedigree, Cody, you mentioned you expect them to do something smaller. Do you have any wishes in terms of genre, in terms of game style, outside of just something smaller than Destiny?
I don't know I know it's probably gonna be a shooter, but it's a pretty good bet. But I think smaller might not be the right word. I would be surprised to see them, at least with their or maybe not. Maybe I'm going to revise what I'm saying. I think for their first IP as a kind of an independent, I would expect them to try to do something that might be a little bit more reserved, more something that we would think Bungie could do. Something a little bit more traditional might not even be the right word, but something more in line with what we've seen them do before. And I don't think that's like I don't know if that's a Halo like traditional linear single player game, but I could see them moving more into an RPG shooter area. They already obviously have the shooter pedigree, and to a certain extent they have the RPG pedigree as well with the looter shooter stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe push a little bit more into the narrative side of things, because I think that's what has continued to draw some people to Destiny, others aside from the grind and the cycle of loot. They have a pedigree when it comes to world building, and I think they know that, and they've tried to do that within the confines of a looter shooter like Destiny. But I can see that I've seen them time and time again strain against the boundaries of what that game can be when it comes to storytelling. And so I wouldn't be surprised, whether it is their next IP or an IP in the future, to pursue something more in line with like a first-person shooter RPG.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Larry?
Yeah, just looking at their history and what they excel at, I'm kind of with Cody that I would expect to see something sort of story-driven. Like Bungie they do so well in that space. But I would also love to see Bungie, like, what they could do if they were producing a multiplayer focused game and they didn't have to worry about exerting time and energy on a story side. Because even as someone who, I've enjoyed Destiny, but I've always had like issues with it, and I've always been very critical of Destiny. But the one thing that, even when I was absolutely furious with the first Destiny game, the one thing I've never shied away from is the gunplay is just incomparable. It's so good. It feels wonderful. And so I lean toward thinking they'll go a story route. And I would love that. But there's a part of me that would really love to see Bungie just just do a straight up we're just putting out a multiplayer experience, competitive shooting experience.
Mhm.
I could
That's
see
all
them
we're
doing
focused
both.
on.
I mean, they seem to want to do multiple IP and to really be what was the quote?
One of the biggest entertainment companies in the world by 2025.
Yeah, I mean that's an ambitious goal, but if they really want to dominate, a part of that is something that's multiplayer and can bring in the bucks over time.
Do you think the phrasing of that alludes to wanting to enter more spaces than gaming?
That's where I
Yes.
was gonna. That's where I was gonna
Okay.
sit, because I side more on what you're hoping for, Larry, as what I see them pursuing with, because you're right. Bungie, great pedigree in terms of storytelling, in terms of world building, but they have an equally massive pedigree and historic pedigree when it comes to developing competitive arena shooters. I mean, the competitive scene of Halo 3 was massive.
Yeah.
And we are now in a world where there is money to be made hand over fist in competitive gaming and in esports. And like you said, Larry, you kind of stole the words right out of my mouth with, like, what makes Destiny so good is, yes, the gameplay loop, yes, the world building is cool, but the gunplay in that game is just unmatched by any other game. And to bring that into a competitive setting, because yeah, Destiny has cool multiplayer modes. Iron Banner is some of the most fun multiplayer experiences I've ever had in gaming, but it doesn't, as long as you've got like the looter shooter grinding mechanic, there's never going to be a competitive angle to it. So coming out and just saying we're going to focus hardcore on a 4v4 5v5 multiplayer arena based shooter to try to like Ubisoft did with Siege. Siege was there, like, it was we are going to make an esport. That's what they did, and I think the word entertainment there is, I don't think it's wise of any company to say we are going to build a video game IP that we hope goes into the television space, into the movie space. It's such a big risk. Like, there's how much success has any company been able to find in that? But esports is an entertainment segment as well that I think we can, while parallel to games and intersecting with games, which I guess is the opposite of parallel, but while intersects with games, I think you could view that as its own arm, its own entity. I mean, Fortnite hired away Nate Nanzer to lead their competitive division, so that's the route I go with it. Seeing them in the competitive space, I think, would be cool. But I also think to Guerrilla, who for years and years made Killzone and then pulled the rug out from everybody and was like, oh, we're going to make an open world action adventure RPG game. And it was fucking stellar. So I don't want to put anybody into a box and just say because you were good at one thing for so long means you need to keep doing that one thing. Bungie may want to come out and do something totally different, but yeah, I'm saying esports route.
That's what I want to see. Just because they're so good at making a fun, balanced multiplayer experience.
In map design,
Yeah.
some of the best map design in all of competitive gaming.
And they've continued to present like new exciting experiences, not just the typical deathmatch. Like, I actually loved the Gambit mode in Destiny 2. It was totally different than any other multiplayer mode I've ever played, and players responded to it as well. I think they're still capable of crafting really unique multiplayer shooter experiences that push against the confines of what we think about as traditional game modes. So yeah, I mean, I would love to see that. I'd also love to see them pursue the single player kind of route, or something squad based, but a little bit more confined in scope. I think the term entertainment got me thinking about something beyond gaming.
Same here.
Not just, I don't even mean esports. I think for a long time they've had, to put it lightly, cinematic ambitions with their projects, whether that's just the intro cutscenes to things. I would not be surprised if they released like a series of shorts or something within the worlds they've created. I think that'd be fascinating. That takes an entirely different team and an entirely different set of resources, but if that's an area they want to move into in a limited capacity, I would not be surprised to see them do that.
Yeah, and my thought there was not even necessarily a movie or a show based off of a game that they've already created. But I think when you look at the depth of the universe that Halo was and is because of Bungie, the books that were written, the you know, maybe not the greatest forays into television, but there were some forays there. When you look at the depth of the story in Destiny, even when the story was told poorly, there was great creativity there. Like, my thought was, does entertainment mean that they're going to give these great writers and cinematographers and artists the opportunity to just tell a story without having to attach the gaming element to it? Like, I was wondering if they might make a step into just something totally new in the television or movie space. But yeah, I don't know.
I worry that that's a crowded space right now, and it requires a whole different understanding of kind of storytelling. And I mean, I think every company under the sun has a streaming service now. So it would largely depend on the model of distribution they choose to create for whatever avenue they choose to pursue.
Not to mention, most of the people who were a part of the development of those stories have probably long since moved on to other places as well.
And there are, I mean, Showtime's making a Halo series. The legacy is still there. It's just it's not under Bungie's control anymore.
Mm-hmm. I know this is kind of an aside. How sure is that? Because I've been
cast it already.
Okay, all right, awesome. Like, I haven't paid much attention to that story because I've been hearing the rumor of the excellent Halo movie or show since I was like 14. So
no, they cast it. I think they started shooting this year. Or they're starting at the beginning of next year.
Okay, cool.
It's in the works.
Nice.